There was something buried in the old family estate, something that even the house itself refused to speak of. Eliza's grandmother had never talked about it, not the darkened corner of the attic or the faded journal tucked under the floorboards. But Eliza had found the journal, and the whispers had started. Quiet at first, like the faint rustling of dry leaves outside a window on a cold night. Yet, when she opened the worn pages, the world she thought she knew began to crumble. The note inside was simple. If you value your life, you will never go back. But Eliza wasn't one to take warnings lightly. The tangled thread of her family's past had always intrigued her, and as each day passed, the compulsion to uncover its mysteries grew. What had happened all those years ago? And why had it been kept secret for so long? With every piece of the puzzle she uncovered, a new question emerged, one she wasn't sure she was ready to face. In the end, she realized something unavoidable. Whatever the truth was, it would change everything. Eliza had always been drawn to the unknown. It had started when she was just a child, with the stories her grandmother used to tell her. At least they were stories. At the time, Eliza thought them to be mere fairy tales, dark forests, forgotten castles, and hidden treasures. But as she grew older, those stories began to take on a different meaning, a shadowy weight that clung to her every step. Her parents had never been the same after the death of her grandmother. They were distant, not in the way one might expect after grief, but in the way of someone trying to outrun a nightmare that wouldn't let go. They moved to a smaller house, far from the family estate, and the days of family gatherings, warmth, and laughter evaporated. Eliza had always been the curious one, the one who questioned, who pushed past silence. Her brothers, however, were content to ignore the past and carry on with their lives. But Eliza couldn't stop feeling that something was amiss. Every time she visited the estate, her footsteps echoed through the empty halls as if they too were waiting for something. Now, at 28, she had returned to the house alone after a string of disappointments, a failed engagement, a career that seemed to be going nowhere. The weight of unspoken history had finally called her back. Eliza had been carrying around a quiet desperation for years, the kind that sneaks up on you when you realize your life is not what you imagined, and your dreams are slowly dying in the face of reality. It was in the stillness of the old house, surrounded by memories of her grandmother, that she felt the stirrings of a deeper need. It wasn't just about the family secret anymore. It wasn't just about the journal or the cryptic warnings. Eliza had come to realize that this journey, this search for answers, was about more than the past. It was about her own struggle to reclaim control over her life. Somewhere, buried beneath years of silence and neglect, there was a version of herself she had left behind, a person full of promise and potential. Finding the truth, unearthing the things her family had kept hidden, might be the only way for her to finally break free from the suffocating grip of her own uncertainty. The attic held more than dust and memories. It held her future. If she could face the secrets there, maybe she could face herself. It happened on the third night after Eliza had moved back into the estate, the night she decided to venture into the attic. The house was quiet, too quiet for her liking. The wind howled outside, rattling the old windows, but inside the air was still and thick with dust. She had spent the previous hours poring over the journals her grandmother left behind, combing through their cryptic entries. Each page felt like an ancient riddle, written in a language only her grandmother had fully understood. The attic had always been forbidden. As a child, Eliza remembered being told stories about the place, tales of eerie sounds and objects that seemed to move on their own. But curiosity always overpowered fear, and now that she was an adult, that same sense of wonder pushed her to finally confront the attic's secrets. The door creaked open with a reluctant groan as she climbed the narrow, steep staircase. The dim light from the hallway barely reached the landing. There, hidden in shadows, stood the trunk, exactly where it had been all those years ago, or so Eliza remembered. It was a dark wooden chest, bound with tarnished brass straps and locked with a heavy iron padlock. Her grandmother had always warned her not to touch it, claiming it held things better left undisturbed. But now, Eliza stood before it, heart racing, her breath shallow with anticipation. The key her grandmother had hidden in the drawer of her old desk was still there, its cold metal a promise of revelations. She inserted the key with trembling fingers and turned it. The padlock clicked open, the sound echoing in the silent attic like a bell tolling for something long overdue. As she lifted the lid, the scent of old paper and dried flowers filled the air. Inside, amidst faded clothes and yellowed photographs, was a single object that made Eliza's breath catch in her throat. It was a letter. But it wasn't just any letter. The paper was frayed and worn at the edges, and the handwriting was unmistakably her grandmother's, though shakier than Eliza remembered. What caught Eliza's attention most, however, was the wax seal, which bore a symbol she had never seen before. 2 interlocking rings, one broken, the other whole. As she unfolded the letter, her fingers froze. The first sentence was a jolt to her heart. If you are reading this, then it is too late to turn back. She could hardly process what she was reading. The letter spoke of a dangerous pact, of things Eliza's family had done years ago, things that had irrevocably tied their fates to forces far beyond their understanding. It spoke of a betrayal, a curse, and a choice her grandmother had made to protect Eliza. But the most chilling part was the last line. You are the key to ending it, but only if you choose to. Eliza stared at the letter, the weight of its meaning crashing over her. The past she had always tried to ignore, the secrets her family had buried deep, were now demanding to be faced. Her hands shook, the letter slipping from her grasp as her mind spun. This was it, the moment she had unknowingly been preparing for her entire life. The truth was no longer just an abstract idea. It was real, and it was calling to her. A distant crash echoed from downstairs, snapping her back into the present. Her pulse raced. What was that? A shadow flitted across the hallway below. Fear bubbled in her chest, but she couldn't stop now. Whatever the consequences, whatever the cost, she knew one thing for sure. There was no turning back. Eliza was already in too deep. She grabbed the letter and ran downstairs, her heart pounding, the mysterious warning already a tangible weight in her hands. This was only the beginning. Eliza barely slept that night. The letter burned a hole in her mind, its contents looping endlessly through her thoughts. She couldn't ignore it anymore. The secrets of her family, the ones that had always loomed like a distant, unreachable fog, were suddenly within her grasp. But with them came a heaviness, a burden she hadn't anticipated. The next morning, she stood in the kitchen, trying to shake off the restless feeling that clung to her like a shadow. A knock on the door pulled her from her reverie. It was Marcus, the local historian, and a longtime family friend. He had always been a quiet man, soft-spoken and deeply invested in the history of the town. Marcus had grown up with her grandmother, and Eliza had always found his presence both comforting and oddly unsettling. "Morning, Eliza," he said with a kind smile. "I was in town. Thought I'd stop by." Marcus's visits had become rarer since her grandmother passed away, and Eliza knew it wasn't just a coincidence. There had always been an unspoken understanding between them, a shared acknowledgement of things neither of them dared speak of. As he stepped inside, she noted the hesitance in his eyes. Something was off. "Something's wrong, isn't it?" she asked, setting down her coffee. Marcus hesitated, looking around the room as though searching for the right words. "You've been going through your grandmother's things, haven't you?" Eliza nodded, feeling a small twinge of unease. "Then you've probably found it, haven't you?" His tone was laced with a quiet urgency that made Eliza's heart quicken. He wasn't asking. He knew. Her pulse raced. "Found what?" "The letter," he said, softly, as if speaking too loudly might summon something dark into the room. "Eliza, you have to stop. Whatever it is your grandmother was trying to protect you from, it's dangerous. You don't understand what you're dealing with." "Dangerous?" Eliza repeated, confusion and frustration rising. "What are you talking about, Marcus? My grandmother knew something. I know she did. This is my family's history. I have to know what happened." He glanced over his shoulder toward the hallway. "Not all knowledge is worth having," he muttered. "Some things are better left buried." The words hit her like a cold slap, but Eliza wasn't about to back down. "What exactly is it you're afraid of? Tell me, Marcus. What aren't you telling me?" He took a step toward her, lowering his voice to a near whisper. There are some things from your grandmother's past that should never be brought to light. She made a promise to protect you from it. There are things, people, who would stop at nothing to make sure those secrets stay hidden. Eliza's mind raced. People? What are you talking about? Why is it that every time I ask someone about the past, they clam up, act like I'm asking for trouble? Marcus hesitated, his face pale, eyes darting nervously toward the door. Because you are, don't you see? It's too dangerous. Whatever your grandmother got involved in, it's not just a family secret. It's bigger than that. He was cut off by a loud thud from outside, followed by the faint sound of rustling. Eliza's heart skipped a beat. The house, usually so still, seemed to hum with an unnatural tension. Marcus's eyes flickered toward the window, his face pale. "Marcus?" Eliza asked, her voice shaky. "What's going on?" He stood motionless for a long moment, then turned to her with an expression that sent a chill down her spine. "I shouldn't have come here. There's no time to explain now. But whatever you do, Eliza, don't go back to that attic. Don't look for any more answers. If you do, you'll regret it." Before she could respond, he rushed toward the door, muttering something about needing to leave. But when he opened it, he froze. Outside, in the front yard, stood a figure. A man, dressed in dark clothing, his face obscured by shadows. The figure didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there, watching. Marcus' expression shifted to one of recognition, but there was no warmth in his gaze. He glanced back at Eliza one last time, his voice barely audible. "You've been warned." And with that, he stepped out the door and disappeared into the misty morning fog. Eliza's head spun as she rushed to the window, but by the time she looked outside, the man was gone. Her breath was ragged as she backed away from the window, trying to process what had just happened. It wasn't just a family secret anymore. It was a matter of life and death. Determined to get answers, Eliza spent the rest of the day combing through her grandmother's journals and letters, hoping to piece together the clues. Her mind was focused, laser-sharp as she flipped through the pages, but no matter how hard she searched, there was one thing that kept eluding her. A connection, a pattern, a thread that could link the fragmented pieces of the past. That evening, she returned to the attic. The air was thick, stale, as if something had been locked away for far too long. Her hands trembled as she pushed open the door to the old trunk once again. This time, there was no hesitation. The letter, the symbol, the warning. And then, a new discovery. A photograph, wedged beneath the other papers, showing her grandmother standing with several people Eliza didn't recognize. Their faces were obscured, but the unsettling thing was that they were standing in front of the estate, and their eyes, all of them, seemed to follow Eliza with an eerie intensity. As she stared at the photo, something in her gut twisted. A realization gripped her. The people in that photo weren't just strangers. They were connected to your family's past, and they were connected to whatever dark force was stalking her now. The door behind her creaked open. Eliza turned, heart in her throat. There, standing in the doorway, was a woman she hadn't seen in years. Her mother. "Eliza," she said, her voice cold and measured. "I think we need to talk." The twist was clear now. This wasn't just about a secret. It was about betrayal. One that went deeper than Eliza could have ever imagined. And the stakes? They were higher than she could ever have guessed. The door clicked shut behind Eliza's mother with a quiet finality. For a moment, there was only silence, heavy and suffocating. Eliza's heart raced as she stared at her mother, whose cold eyes seemed as distant as the woman she'd been before her grandmother's death. The last time they'd spoken, they'd been strangers to each other. Now, standing in the dim light of the attic, Eliza felt like she was facing a ghost, a version of her mother that had been buried long ago. "Why are you here?" Eliza asked, her voice tight with the weight of everything left unsaid. She didn't trust the woman standing before her. Not yet. She had to know why her mother had returned after so many years, and why now, when everything was beginning to unravel. Her mother's lips tightened, her gaze flickering to the photograph in Eliza's hands. "I should have come back sooner," she said, voice tinged with regret. "But it wasn't safe. You were better off without knowing the truth. Eliza's stomach churned. The truth? She repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. The words felt heavier each time she said them. Her mother let out a shaky breath, her expression faltering for the first time since entering the room. There are things you don't understand, Eliza. Things your grandmother did to protect you. Things I should have protected you from, but you kept me in the dark. Eliza's words were sharp, accusing. You kept us all in the dark. What did she protect me from? What were you all trying to hide? There's no time, her mother said, voice frantic, her grip tight around Eliza's arm. We have to leave. They're already inside. No, Eliza countered, pulling away. I'm not running. Not again. I need to know what this is all about. Who's after us? Her mother's face contorted with frustration, but there was something else there too. Fear, raw and jagged, as though she herself was trapped in a nightmare she couldn't escape. You don't understand, Eliza. You cannot know everything. It's too dangerous. Eliza's pulse hammered in her ears. Every inch of her body screamed at her to leave, to take the safe route her mother was offering. But the other half of her, the part that had grown tired of living in ignorance, fought back. What's more dangerous, Mom? Hiding forever? Or knowing the truth? If we keep running, it will never end. You've been running all your life. It's time to stop. Her mother's eyes flickered with something akin to regret. And what if the truth destroys you? What if knowing everything costs you the only thing you have left? Your life. Before Eliza could respond, a loud bang echoed through the house, followed by the unmistakable sound of heavy boots on the wooden floors. Someone was moving quickly, purposefully, searching. Eliza's heart leapt in her chest as the footsteps neared the attic door. Her mother's hand tightened around her wrist, panic rising in her voice. Eliza, they'll kill us both. Please, let's go now, before it's too late. But Eliza wasn't listening anymore. Every second spent waiting, hiding, was a second closer to losing whatever shred of control she had left. She wasn't running anymore. Not from the past, not from the truth, not from anything. The footsteps grew louder, more distinct, closer, and she knew. They were here. Her hand moved instinctively to the old trunk, the one she had first uncovered. Inside, the letter from her grandmother, the photograph, the cryptic message. They were all there, waiting for her. She had to figure out what it all meant, and she had to do it now. Eliza, listen to me. Her mother's voice was frantic, a thread of desperation threading through it. These people aren't just after secrets. They're after you. They want to control you. No, Eliza said, her voice firm. They're after everything. They want to control everything, and I'm not letting them. The door to the attic groaned under pressure as someone struck it from the other side. Eliza's mother whipped around, eyes wide with fear. We don't have time to argue. The door slammed open. A tall figure stood in the doorway, his silhouette dark against the faint light from the hallway. His features were hard to make out, but his presence was unmistakable, a cold, suffocating energy that seemed to draw the very air from the room. Behind him stood two others, their faces hidden by the shadows. Her mother stepped back instinctively, her body tense, as though she had seen this man before. Eliza could feel the shift in the room, the sudden weight of danger pressing in on them from all sides. Eliza, the man said, his voice low, almost hypnotic, as though he were speaking through thick layers of fog. It's time to come with us. Eliza stood her ground, defiance flickering in her chest. Who are you? The man stepped forward, his movements deliberate, predatory. My name is Victor, and this, he gestured to the room, is the end of your little rebellion. Your family's secrets are no longer yours to keep. Eliza's heart pounded in her chest as she glanced at her mother, whose face had gone pale. This wasn't just a chance encounter. They'd been tracking them, waiting for the right moment to strike. And now, here they were. You don't have to do this, Eliza said, her voice surprisingly steady despite the fear flooding her body. Whatever you're after, you won't find it here. Victor's lips curled into a faint, humorless smile. You don't know what you're dealing with, Eliza. The truth your grandmother kept hidden is far more dangerous than you could imagine. And you... He paused, as though savoring the words. You are the key. The words struck her like a punch to the gut. The key. It had been written in her grandmother's letter, but hearing it out loud coming from someone else, it made it real and horrifying. Eliza, don't listen to him, her mother said, voice tight with panic. They'll destroy you. They'll use you. Victor didn't seem to care. His eyes were fixed on Eliza with a cold intensity. Come with us, he said again, more forcefully. You can't hide from this. You've already seen too much. You'll either join us willingly or we'll take what we need. Chaparti. The weight of the moment settled over Eliza like a heavy cloak, suffocating and oppressive. The stakes had never been higher, If she went with them, it meant giving up everything she had fought for, her quest for the truth, her autonomy, her life as she knew it. If she didn't, it meant war, a dangerous, life-threatening fight against forces she didn't fully understand. Her heart was pounding in her chest. This was no longer just about uncovering the past. This was about survival. Hers, her family's, everything she held dear. Eliza, her mother's voice cracked, filled with raw emotion. Don't do this. Please, let it go. But Eliza couldn't let it go. Not anymore. She had spent years running from the truth, hiding behind unanswered questions and half-formed theories. She had thought that the past would remain buried. But now, in the face of the truth and Victor's chilling promise, she realized that her family's history was never meant to stay hidden. It was too dangerous, too powerful, and she couldn't walk away from it. You'll have to kill me first, Eliza said, her voice firm, cutting through the tension in the room like a blade. Victor's eyes narrowed. For a split second, the room seemed to freeze, the air thick with the promise of violence. And then he nodded, the faintest of smiles tugging at the corner of his lips. So be it. Suddenly, the room erupted in chaos. Eliza's world tilted as Victor lunged toward her, his movements swift and practiced. Her mother screamed, rushing forward to intercept him. But it was too late. Victor was faster. In that moment, everything changed. There was no going back. The stakes were no longer theoretical. They were real. The fight for the truth, for survival, had begun, and Eliza was right at the heart of it. The world around Eliza seemed to blur as Victor lunged toward her. His movements were fast, purposeful, and she barely had time to react before he was upon her. But something within her snapped. The years of running, of hiding, and the crushing weight of the secrets she'd uncovered pushed her forward. This wasn't just a fight for survival. This was a fight for control over her own fate. Victor's hand gripped her wrist like a vice, pulling her toward him with unnatural strength. His breath was hot against her face as he sneered, "You're too weak to understand what you're dealing with." "Maybe?" Eliza gasped, struggling against his hold. "But I'm not weak enough to let you control me." In an instinctive move, Eliza twisted her body, slamming her knee into Victor's abdomen. He grunted, stepping back, but the moment of freedom was fleeting. His hands shot out again. But this time, Eliza was ready. "Mom!" she screamed, but her mother was already charging at Victor, her face a mask of determination. But Victor swatted her aside with a single effortless motion. She crashed into the attic wall, crumpling to the floor. Eliza's heart lurched. She couldn't do this alone. The room seemed to close in around her, the walls shrinking with every passing second. Her mother was hurt, Victor was moving in again, and all Eliza could think was that she needed to make him stop. She had to do something. Anything. The old trunk. The one her grandmother had kept hidden away. The key. The symbol. The secrets. They had all led her here, to this very moment. In a desperate, frenzied movement, Eliza yanked open the trunk. Inside, the letter her grandmother had written, the photograph, and something else, a small, intricately carved box, lay waiting. Her fingers shook as she reached for it. Victor's voice cut through the air like a knife. "Don't you understand? It's too late for you. You belong to them now." Eliza ignored him, gripping the box with trembling hands. The carvings were familiar, the same symbol she had seen in the photograph and on the letter. Her grandmother had known what she was doing. She had set this in motion long ago. It was meant to be used in a moment just like this one. As she twisted the box open, an odd warmth spread through her fingertips. A blinding light burst from within, filling the attic with a searing brightness. Victor recoiled, stumbling back, his expression one of shock and growing fear. The light didn't blind Eliza. Instead, it filled her with a sense of power. Power she didn't fully understand, but felt deep within her bones. "What is this?" Victor hissed, his face twisted in fury as the light pulsed. He seemed to retreat, visibly shaken. "It's the truth," Eliza said, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. "The truth your master will never control." She had seen enough to know what to do. The pact, the curse, the symbol. It all tied back to this object. This was the key her grandmother had hidden, the one thing that could disrupt the power Victor and his followers sought to wield, the same key that could break the curse and reveal everything that had been buried for generations. The light from the box expanded, swirling through the room like a living thing, wrapping itself around Eliza, her mother, and Victor. Eliza's heart pounded, her senses overwhelmed, but she refused to falter. Victor's face twisted with a mix of rage and horror as the box's light intensified, locking them all in a cage of brightness. "No!" Victor roared, stepping back, but the light surged toward him, as though alive, as though it had its own will. The force of it pushed him to the floor, his body writhing in resistance. Eliza stood tall, watching as Victor fought the light with everything he had. But this wasn't just any fight. It was the final confrontation, the moment where everything she had learned, every secret uncovered, would either destroy her or set her free. Her mother, still dazed but recovering, pushed herself up, eyes wide with disbelief as the light filled the attic. "Eliza, what are you doing?" she whispered, fear and awe in her voice. "I'm ending it," Eliza replied, her voice firm and clear. "It ends here. The secrets, the lies, everything. No one will control us anymore." The light began to dim, and Victor's struggling weakened as the energy drained from him. The look in his eyes shifted from rage to desperation. "You don't understand," he spat, his voice raw. "You'll never be free of this. They'll come for you, Eliza. They always come." "Not anymore," Eliza said, stepping forward. "This is over." With a final decisive motion, Eliza closed the box. The light snapped out of existence, leaving only the sound of heavy breathing and silence. Victor lay on the floor, his body trembling. The power of the box, of whatever force her grandmother had left behind, had completely drained him. He wasn't dead, but he was no longer a threat. Her heart still raced, but Eliza felt the weight of the world lift off her shoulders. The truth had been revealed, the power had shifted, and Victor's control over them was broken. But it wasn't just about defeating Victor. It was about taking control of her own fate, choosing her own path, and stepping into the light of a truth that had always been there, waiting to be discovered. Her mother stepped toward her, eyes filled with a mixture of admiration and something more, something soft, perhaps regret. "You did it," she whispered, her voice filled with a new, unspoken respect. "You ended it." Eliza looked at her mother, the years of pain and distance between them seeming to dissolve in that moment. There were still questions, still healing to be done, but for the first time, Eliza didn't feel like she was alone in the dark. The room was quiet now, the battle over, but the truth was only just beginning. And Eliza had won. The light from the box had vanished, leaving the attic in an eerie calm. Victor's body lay motionless on the floor, the fight drained from him, the power he'd wielded over Eliza and her family broken. Her breath still came in shallow, quick bursts, and her hands trembled as she stared at the lifeless figure before her. She had done it. She had defeated him. But the victory felt different than she expected. There was no rush of triumph, no sense of relief flooding her. Instead, there was a quiet emptiness, as though the weight of everything she'd learned over the past few days had settled onto her shoulders in a way that was hard to shake off. Her mother was slowly getting to her feet, her face pale and drawn. She was looking at Eliza, something fragile in her gaze, a mixture of awe and sorrow. For so long, Eliza had wanted to know the truth, to understand the family's secrets, to uncover the past. But now that it was all laid bare, it felt like the cost had been high. The tension in the room was palpable, both of them struggling to process the events that had just unfolded. "Eliza," her mother said, her voice barely a whisper. You did it. You really did it." Eliza nodded, her throat tight, but she didn't have words for the maelstrom of emotions swirling inside her. Victory had a bitter edge. "It's over now, isn't it? Whatever this was, it's over." Her mother's eyes clouded with a sadness that had always been there, buried beneath the years of silence. "It's over," she confirmed, but there was an underlying hesitation. "But it's never truly gone. You can't erase the past, Eliza. The truth doesn't make everything okay." Eliza stared at her mother, her chest heavy with unspoken words. "Then, what do we do now?" she asked, feeling the enormity of their situation. The truth, after all, wasn't something that could be ignored or forgotten. It would linger, change everything they knew about their family, their lives, and their futures. Her mother met her gaze, and for the first time in a long while, they shared something, an understanding. "We move forward," her mother said softly, "together. We face whatever comes next, and we rebuild. We've lost enough time already." Eliza nodded, slowly coming to terms with the reality of it all. It hadn't been an easy journey. She had fought against her own doubts, her own fears, and even against the love she once had for the family that had kept so many secrets from her. But in the end, she had taken control of her own story. She had chosen to fight, to seek the truth, no matter the cost. And now, as the sounds of distant sirens began to echo through the quiet house, Eliza understood that the journey was far from over. But it was her journey, and for the first time, she felt like she was in control. The days following Victor's defeat were filled with strange, uneasy quiet. The authorities had arrived soon after Eliza and her mother had dealt with Victor, taking him into custody, though the details of his capture remained elusive. It didn't matter much to Eliza. The confrontation had been a turning point, one that had shattered the illusion of safety she had carried for years. What truly mattered now was rebuilding, not just from the outside, but from within. Her mother had stayed close, even though the rift between them couldn't be fully erased overnight. The truth had come out, and it had changed everything between them. They no longer hid behind silence or half-truths, but even in this new, fragile connection, there was still a distance, a space that had grown between them over the years. Eliza knew it would take time to heal, to mend what had been broken. But now, at least, they could begin to heal together. Eliza spent hours poring over the letter her grandmother had left her, trying to piece together the fragments of the past. She wasn't sure where it would all lead, but she now knew that she was the one who had the power to decide. There was no more running from the truth, only facing it head on. And then there was the symbol, the key to everything. Its power had been undeniable, but as Eliza examined it, she came to realize that it was not something to be feared, but something to understand. It wasn't a weapon. It was a bridge between generations, between her family's dark past and its uncertain future. One evening, as she sat on the porch, staring out at the fading sunset, her mother came to sit beside her. Neither spoke at first, but the silence between them wasn't as suffocating as before. It felt more like an unspoken agreement, a shared understanding of the difficult path ahead. "You're different now," her mother said softly, glancing at her. "I can see it. You're stronger than I ever was." Eliza turned to face her mother, meeting her gaze. "I had to be," she replied, the weight of those words heavy in her chest. "I had to face what you couldn't, what we couldn't. And now, I have to keep going. I can't go back. I don't want to." Her mother nodded, a faint, sad smile tugging at the corner of her lips. "Neither do I. But we have to be ready, Eliza. There's always more to this than we can see. And if you're going to keep moving forward, you need to know that you're never alone in this. Not again." Eliza looked up at the sky, the stars just beginning to twinkle above them, feeling for the first time in a long while that everything wasn't lost. The journey ahead would be hard. There would still be dangers to face, secrets to uncover, but she was ready. She had learned the hardest lesson of all. The truth, no matter how dark or painful, was worth seeking. And in the end, it was the truth that would set her free. As the night settled around them, Eliza felt a quiet peace seep into her bones. She had faced her greatest fear, had stared into the abyss of her family's past, and had come out the other side. It wasn't the ending she had imagined, but it was the beginning of something new. And for the first time, she knew that she was strong enough to walk through it, no matter what came next. As Eliza stood on the porch, watching the world quietly shift from dusk to night, she felt the weight of everything she had learned and fought for settling into her bones. The truth had been a double-edged sword, cutting through the years of lies and silence, but also revealing the scars that had shaped her family, her choices, and herself. It had changed her in ways she couldn't yet fully understand, but it had also set her free. The past had tried to define her, to trap her in its shadow. But in the end, it was her decision to face it that had allowed her to reclaim the narrative of her own life. She had learned that the truth wasn't something to be feared, but embraced, even when it seemed too much to bear. Because in the end, the real power lay not in hiding from the darkness, but in choosing to walk toward the light, even if it was just a faint glimmer on the horizon. Eliza turned to her mother, her heart swelling, with a new sense of resolve. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be more to uncover, more to confront, but she was no longer afraid. What would it take to fully break free from the past? Maybe the answer wasn't about escaping it, but understanding it, and then choosing each day to keep moving forward, no matter the cost. And in that moment, Eliza realized that despite everything, she was exactly where she needed to be.